Welcome to Rooting for You, a seasonal gardening podcast for non-experts. I'm Tess, and I know nothing.
And I'm Alyce, and I know some things.
Each week we'll chat about one gardening topic and then discuss the effort-reward payoff by asking, is the juice worth the squeeze? Just a heads up, there might be a bit of swearing in this episode. You've been warned. Today we're going to be talking about how to plant a plant, and a little disclaimer that this is probably quite a basic topic and some of you might be a little bit more advanced, but you can either listen along and feel like a hero or
skip to the next episode.
So this topic came up last summer when I was planting some tomatoes, and despite the package saying that they should be planted more than 50 centimetres apart, I proceeded to plant them super close to each other to make sure that I had plenty of room for everything else I wanted to plant. Alyce was quick smart to let me know that actually plants need a suitable amount of space. So there's not really a topic that's specific to autumn, but a key topic for any time that you're putting something into the ground is how to actually plant a plant. So Alyce, let us know. What do we need to know here?
First, I'd like to say it was really painful for me to burst your enthusiasm after you'd planted in the tomatoes and I had to say, darling, they were way too close together. So, I really hope this episode kind of would prevent the Tesses of the world stuffing up the tomato planting. So this discussion we're going to have now is for any plant that you're going to plant. So vegetable seedlings are a common thing that people will be planting, but same goes for any kind of fruit trees or flowers. So this discussion, I really want to talk about planting a plant. So
the first question I have is, and I know that it's a big topic, but do you go with seedlings or do you go with seeds?
It is such a big topic. I feel like we should do it in a second episode because it really depends on the time of year that it is, and it also depends on the plant you're growing. Some things go better from seed, some things are really hard from seed, so I'd say buy a seedling. So we will talk about that. But at this point, you have a plant. I don't care how you got a plant. Maybe someone gave you a plant. Maybe you bought it from a nursery, from a seedling. Maybe you grew it from a seed. Whatever it is, you've got one. So right now you've got your punnet, and let's use your chili example, Tess, because I think this is a good one. So you've bought the punnet from the nursery, and in the punnet, what have you got? You've got 4 plants.
You've got 4 little seedlings in the punnet that you've bought. One punnet bought 4 little seedlings.
Exactly. Now you might buy a punnet, and depending on the plant, it might have 20 seedlings in it if it's something like silver beet, or if it's an advanced tomato, it might only have 1. So the first question is, how many plants do we actually have in our punnet? Again, look closely at the root system. How many little uppy shooties do you have in that punnet? Count those. That's how many individual plants you have. And each individual plant needs to be planted separately. We can't just whack them all in the hole, which is what Tess did with the chilies.
So this is quite basic, but it's because they need soil. They need their space. They need their nutrients. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. Because otherwise they're going to be competing for water. They're going to be competing for nutrients. They're going to be competing for sunlight. So if you planted like your chilies, if you plant them all in one hole, they're probably going to grow fine, but you're not going to get the kind of yield that you want. And, again, we're all about maximum return. So spacing them out, it's going to take you a few minutes, but it's going to be a whole lot better for the end result. So first you've ascertained how many plants you actually have. Then you need to actually separate these plants into individual plants. If they aren't particularly root bound, which is a term. Have you ever taken like a pot off a plant and the roots are like so intensely covering, it's just like a cube of roots? That's called pot bound. If they're not pot bound, it's quite easy. You can just break them into the individual cells. So like with your chilies, you would have just broken that punnet into 4 individual
and that's cubes. Just shaking them apart.
Shake, like literally ripping them apart to an extent. But often you will buy, a lot of seedlings in one punnet, or they'll be quite root bound and you can't just pull them apart. In that case, the trick here is to get a little basin of water, like 5 centimeters deep, and actually submerge the punnet and all the roots in the water. and then let it sit there for 5 minutes. That'll actually wash away a lot of the soil and you'll be just left with the roots, and it's really easy to separate them.
This might be a silly question.
There are no silly questions. None.
If at this stage I just rip them apart,
Yeah.
what kind of damage is that going to do to
good
each
question.
of the seedlings?
Good question. So each seedling, each little plant, each little shooty uppy has a root system. And if you go ripping them, you will break some of those roots. And the more roots a plant has, the stronger the plant is, the faster it's going to grow, the bigger it's going to grow, the bigger yield you're going to get. So you might not kill the plant, but if you want, again, maximum return, you're going to want to preserve as many roots as possible. So by submerging them, then we can pull them apart very delicately and actually keep all the roots on each seedling. So you're looking at it as one big root ball of just like combination roots. You want each plant to have their roots. That's the key here. So you've separated it, soak it in the water, pull them apart, separate them. Now you have to get them in the ground. So digging a hole, you want to dig a hole that is the same size as the roots. So if this has come from a punnet that was 10 centimetres deep, you want to dig a hole 10 centimetres deep.
If I can just take a step back. So
Please.
I've got, just using the chili example, I've got 4 chili plants. I've pulled them apart. I've got my root systems. Am I digging 4 holes?
Yes, you are. Very good question. But let's start with the first hole and then we'll look at where the next 3 are going.
Excellent.
So first hole, we're going to dig it as deep as the roots. So you want the plant to sit in the ground the same way it was sitting in the punnet. So at the soil line in the punnet is where you want the soil line to be in the ground. If your soil is really dry, I want you to actually fill that hole with water first. So we're going to pre-wet it, and this is going to make your plant very happy because it's going to be nicely hydrated when it goes in. If your soil is really well hydrated, you actually don't need to bother with that step. So you've dug your hole, you've filled it with water potentially, you've hydrated it. You're going to put the plant in, hold the top of it so it sits flush with the line of the soil. Backfill the soil, just push it in with your hand or with a shovel, and then push it down. Because what you actually don't want is you don't want air trapped in the soil, because air trapped around the roots is really bad for them. So you want to try and push the soil down, break those air pockets. Then we're going to water it in, and this is going to do 2 things. 1, it's going to water the plant, which is important. 2, it's going to actually totally get rid of all the air bubbles in the soil. So in the same way, think about anything. If you fill it with water, any air bubbles there are actually just going to come to the surface.
Can you water too much at this point, or is a hose too much and you should be using like a watering can for more delicate watering?
You're totally right, actually. If you take this delicate seedling and then you get your high pressure hose and squirt the shit out of it, you're going to damage it. So yes, be fragile. Watering cans are great, especially watering cans that are designed for seedlings because they're quite fine. If you've got a hose with one of those twisty ends on it to change the misting setting, really good. Because you've delicately put it in position, you've delicately set it all up, you're right. Don't go.
So they're as delicate as they look.
They are as delicate as they look. And some plants are more delicate than others, and it just depends on what it is. But at this point, you're right. Give it a very delicate watering, but a substantial one. More water than what it just needs to hydrate, because again, we're about getting rid of the air bubbles. Exactly. So are we cool on this?
Yep. Got it.
Fabulous.
My first one is in.
Your first one's in. So now, chili example, there's 3 more to get in. Where on earth to plant those? So on the seedling punnet, if you purchase the seedling, it will tell you the spacing. And when it says 40 centimetres, it actually means 40 centimetres.
40 centimetres between each seedling, not 40 centimetres between this punnet of 4 and the next punnet of 4. Which is where I went wrong.
Look, I can see how someone would interpret it that way. Yes, you're right. 40 centimetres between each plant. Something small like a spring onion or, that might be, or a radish might be 5 or 10 centimetres. Something really big like a pumpkin might be up to 2 metres. So, go off the seedling punnet. If you've grown from seed, the seed packet will tell you how far to space it. If someone's given you the seedling, ask them. because they probably know what they're doing if they're gifting seedlings. So look at that measurement and, you know, I'm not talking get your ruler out and get all anal retentive about this, but at the same time, if it says 40 centimetres, aim for about that. If we planted 10 centimetres apart, we're not going to have enough nutrients, we're not going to have enough water, we're not going to have enough sunlight. So you've got your first one in, measure around and get the next 4 in at 40 centimetres between each. And again, for each seedling, we repeat the same process, which is dig the hole, water it in, press the seedling in, water it in again. So that's basically it, I think.
A question that I have is someone who's not super organised all the time. If I get a seedling, is that a way to get around the potential timings? So if it says put it in at the beginning of summer, can I get a seedling and put it in midsummer?
Absolutely. And actually, I think that's one of the biggest advantages of buying seedlings is because you can cheat the seasons a bit. Because as you say, if something says get in the beginning of summer and you buy a seedling that's probably, 4 or 6 weeks old, you've actually jumped 4 or 6 weeks in the process. So it's a really handy way, if you're not organised with the seeds, to actually time it really well. So usually when people talk about when to plant something, unless they've specified seed or seedling, they probably mean seed. So therefore, as you say, if you say this seed needs to go in early summer and you buy a seedling late summer or midsummer, that's probably totally fine.
That's so helpful because often it says tomatoes, summer, whatever, and you feel like you've missed the boat if you haven't gone the first week of summer. But if you know you can get a seedling and you have a little bit of leeway with the time, then that's actually, for someone like me who's a little bit unorganised, super helpful to know that you haven't missed the boat for that season on whatever plant you're growing at that time.
No, it's a really good point. And even I use seedlings all the time to try and cheat the seasons because it's quite cold where I garden. So for me, it's sometimes hard to get a whole life cycle in over summer. So I will use a seedling because I can plant it really early and I've got an extra 6 weeks or 4 weeks ahead of the cycle. So you're right. You've got a much broader spectrum of time you can plant something depending on whether you choose a seed or a seedling. But here's the thing is if you're too late, just don't put it in the ground. It's never going to fruit, okay? Tess is laughing right now because she's done this. And the thing is, right, let's use the tomato example. You put a tomato in the ground, it might grow into some nice big bush. Say you plant it end of summer. You're going to have some nice big tomato bush in autumn.
Which is lovely.
But are we in the bush business? No.
No, we're in the fruit business.
We're in the fruit business as far as tomatoes are concerned. So we're not interested in the big bush. We are interested in the fruit. So if you've missed the season, you cannot cheat nature, plant something else.
So let's talk about first few weeks of life. You've got it in, you've watered it, air bubbles are out. What am I watching out for to make sure that the roots properly take to the soil? I don't know, what's the right word there?
I feel like take to the soil is about as good as any word I could come up with. You're so right because you think about it, you've seen how small those roots are because you've removed it from the punnet. They're actually quite small. Those roots are providing all the hydration for that plant. So when the soil dries out, a new plant doesn't have a lot of roots to access moisture, so it can dry out and actually die very easily. When a plant is big, and you see this in trees, they can go ages without being watered because their root system is so big and so deep. They can access water well below what we're looking at on the soil, like on the upper level of the soil. But with a new seedling, it doesn't have those resources and those reserves. So you will need to water it possibly every second day if it's warm, while it's establishing those roots. Once the roots are a bit more established, it gives you more time in between waterings. But early stages, as you say, you need to be on it more. And
again, I assume we're using a more delicate
We're using
water.
a delicate spray. A delicate spray here. Also in the early stages of life is the time when any pests are going to be a problem, because pests later on, they might get a couple of leaves, but they're not going to kill the plant. When the plant only has 2 leaves, if a caterpillar comes along and chomps those 2 leaves,
That might be the only 2 it's got.
literally. So it's the end. So again, in the early stages, and I'm talking like maybe 2 or 3 weeks, I want you to look at that little baby a lot more often, water it more often, and just check it for pests more often. This is the danger zone for your plants.
So that's looking at the leaves. I'm sure
Yeah.
we can do a whole episode on this, but that's just
Definitely.
looking at checking the leaves.
Yeah.
Okay.
And like, if things look good, they are good. If they've got holes in them, we might have a problem.
Got it. So the big question, is the juice worth the squeeze? This is where we look at the effort-reward ratio of today's topic. The categories are superstar, high effort, high reward. Completing this will make you feel like an absolute rock star. Best on ground, low effort, high reward. Quick wins and fill-ins, low effort, low reward. And finally, the wooden spoon, high effort, but not much reward. Alyce, planting your plants, where does it fit on the squeezy juice?
The squeezy
matrix?
juice matrix. Well, I mean, without a plant, do we have a gardening podcast? Probably not. So I'm going to say this is about as foundational as it gets. It's going to take you 5 or 10 minutes to plant a plant. Very low investment. But I mean, to spend 5 or 10 minutes plant a plant and then have, 10 kilos of tomatoes a few months later, I'm going to say that's high reward. So I personally am going to give this best on ground status.
For me, best on ground as well. I mean, it's a pretty basic 101, this one. If you're not putting plants in the ground, you're not getting fruit, veggies, anything. So,
Flowers,
definitely,
nothing.
it's a best on ground for me.
Yeah, if you don't have it in you to get the plant in the ground, we might not be the podcast for you. Yeah, so I think everyone can plant a plant, especially if you've bought it from a seedling. I think we'll do a whole nother topic on this, but I mean, buy the seedling, whack it apart, get it in the hole, space it right.
It definitely seems to be the cheat between
It's the cheat.
a seed or a seedling. It's your go-to. If you're a little bit late in the season, you can still get it in the ground and you're going to get something from it.
Exactly. So is the juice worth the squeeze? Absolutely. Best on ground, plant those plants.
So that's all we have time for today. Let us know how you go with planting your plants. And remember,
We are rooting for you.